must increase people's faith, people's conviction, and that takes effort and that takes persuasion. And that is what Luqman started with establishing issues of creed in the beginning. And then Luqman keeps on talking about Allah's knowledge, because if you don't know that Allah can see you anywhere, no one abides by law, except there are exceptions, there are rarities, but usually people abide by law as long as law can reach them, or as long as law can find out about their deviation. But as a Muslim, you should abide by law. You should have honor, you should be honest, you should be dutiful to people, your neighbors, your parents, your kinsfolk, your spouse, your kids, and so on and so forth. You should not lie, you should not steal, and so on and so forth. Not only because the law will find out about you, or that it can be enforced on you, but because you internally observe, you have like an internal watcher which is watching over you. That internal watcher is your conscience of God. It is your taqwa. It is your conscience of God. Because you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching over you. So you watch over yourself because you know that you're being watched. Whether or not you like it, you are being watched at all times. And that concept itself must be instilled in the children, that Allah is watching over us. No matter where we are, Allah is watching over us. Do you know the story of Umar ibn Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, being the leader of the Muslims at the time, and the Khalifa, and one that considered one of the 100 by Michael Hart, the 100 most influential in the history of man. When he walked by a fence and he heard a conversation between a woman and her daughter, and the woman was saying to her daughter, "Why don't you mix the milk with water?" And all of you know the story, but the issue here is that the daughter said to her mother that Umar will find out, or the authorities, or Umar will find out about us. She said, "No, he would not find out about us. How can he know?" And the daughter replied, "If he doesn't find out about us, Allah sees us. Allah watches over us." Umar was so impressed with that daughter, to the point that he had asked her for marriage for his son, that he married his son to that girl, or to that young lady, because he was impressed with her honesty. She is completely conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She knows that Allah is watching over her, therefore she is watching over herself. And that is a lesson that every child needs to learn. And every child needs to learn also that Allah will bring it forth. Ya'ti bi Allah. Allah will bring it forth. Being the weight of a mustard seed in a rock or in the heavens or the earth, Allah will bring it forth. People are accountable. There will come a day when people pay for their mistakes and be rewarded for their good deeds. And that belief in the hereafter is one of the things that we need to emphasize in the education and the raising of the children. So you have now many foundations of faith that Luqman has covered. He has covered the greatness and existence of Allah, the absoluteness of Allah. Allah is all something, all aware, the knowledge of Allah, which includes predestination, and also the hereafter, the reminder about the hereafter. Yes, Allah will bring it forth. And then Luqman goes on to talk about the acts of worship, and he says, أقم الصلاة يا بني أقم الصلاة وأمر بالمعروف وانهى عن المنكر واصبر على ما أصابك إن ذلك من عزم الأمور. Establish the prayers. Establish the prayers is important because you need to always be connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that prayer connects you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You do need to take the time out of your schedule to converse with Allah. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that this prayer is your conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah listens to you and Allah answers you. So your feeling of Allah's existence, your feeling that Allah is conversing with you, you're feeling that Allah is close to you. When you take yourself out of your busy schedule to do this will forbid you from fahsha wal munkar, obscenity and munkar, which is wrongdoing in general, evil in general, wickedness in general, because you're being reminded. Now if you do this salah as a duty, on the run, on the go, without contemplating what this salah is about, without feeling that you're actually conversing with Allah, without actually pondering over the meanings of the words that you utter, it will not work. It will be empty. It will be void of meaning and void of impact on us. So establish the prayers, aqim as-salah. And the word establish the prayer is different from pray. Aqim as-salah, establish the khushu', the humbleness, the serenity, contemplation, establish the prayer. Do it perfectly. وَأَمَرْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَانْهَى عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ وَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا أَصَابَكَ إِنَّ ذَلِكَ مِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. Ordain good and forbid bad. But how do we tell our kids to ordain good and forbid bad if we live in a society that is not a Muslim society? Well, there is much good that you can ordain, much bad that you can forbid in any society. There are human virtues that people do not disagree over. There is the virtue of morality, honesty, virtue of dutifulness to the parents, kindness to the neighbor, cleanliness, and so on and so forth. There are so many virtues that are agreed upon, and then they can certainly ordain good and forbid bad in this regard. But can they also talk about their faith? Yes, because if they don't talk about their faith and they do not show the people the beauty of their faith, then they don't love those people. If you love someone, you would love the best for them. And if you feel that the best thing that you have is your worship of Allah alone, then you would want to share this best, greatest thing with all the people around you. So that does not have to be offensive. And ordaining good and forbidding bad, many people think that you can't do this because it's not a Muslim society. Well, ordaining good and forbidding bad, even in a Muslim society, is not on enforcing good. It is not about enforcement. It's about enjoining. It's about talking. It's about ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal mau'izati al hasana. Invite to the way of your Lord by wisdom and a beautiful exhortation. Enforcement comes from the law, comes from the judge, comes from muhtasib, comes from the qasd. It does not come from the individuals, except in certain conditions and certain circumstances that are known. Certainly, you're not going to give up your parenthood. You're not going to give up your authority over your kids. So your kids, yes, you'll talk to them, you'll try to convince them, you persuade them, but ultimately the kids need to know that there is obedience for the parents, that they should obey the parents, that it is not like a democratic process inside the home. It is partly a democratic process, consultation, you take everybody's opinion and so on and so forth, but then thereafter there is obedience for the parents because the parents know what's good for the kids. And if you give up that right, the kids will resist. And it's quite obvious. It makes one completely shocked and distressed to hear the kids, a child saying to his father, the father was saying to the child, you call me names. And the child said to the father, you also call me names. So the father said to the child, I didn't call you names, you were the one who called me names. And then he said, you called me, you said shut up to me. Well, that is heartbreaking because now they're equal. Now there is no father and son. Now there is no respect. Now there is no obedience. Now there is no gratitude for the father. Well, the father, spends a great deal of his life, a great deal of his thought, his money, his effort, his everything, and certainly more the mother, for that child, for that child's sake. So there's got to be a difference here. There's got to be, they're not equal, and they shouldn't be equal. And that discussion is quite shocking. So, but in general, we're talking about ordaining good and forbidding bad. You can't ordain good and forbid bad. with regard to all of these things that are agreed upon, and also with regard to these things that are controversial and not agreed upon. But that does not mean enforcement. That means invitation. Look at this, And then we're sometimes too afraid to say, look at this, look at what we have. And it is important, as you know, to show it by action before you say it by words and statements. You have to show it by action. Because if you don't walk your talk, people can't really get themselves to believe you. But you say, look at this. Islamic financing, for instance. Nowadays in the Financial Times and all over magazines and so on and so forth, they're saying, and in fact the official paper of the Vatican, Observatoire, they said that it is about time that Western banks learn from Islamic banking if they want to regain the confidence of their clients.